What's up, everybody? Welcome to the NFL Draft Headquarters podcast, video podcast, apparently tonight with Justis and I. Justin's here, just not in video form. And I'm your host, Seth Cox. With me, as always, Justis Mosqueda, who will be leaving us shortly. What's up, Justis?
Hey guys, how you guys doing?
And Justin Higdon. What's up, Justin?
Oh, just shaking off the cobwebs from the big Manziel party Friday night.
That's right. That's right. You got to make sure he gets to practice on time. So
I dropped the ball on that one, but it was just a treatment, though. It was just a hamstring treatment.
He's got to be cut. That's what I read today on ESPN. He and Josh Gordon. Cut them both. Just get rid of them.
We're skipping right to the hot takes tonight, huh?
Oh, yeah. All right. So a little different format tonight. A lot of games to talk about, so we're going to get started with the probably the worst games in terms of prospects, and both of you kind of agreed on this one, what to watch, what not to watch, and so if you're interested, if you're going to a bar to watch, these are the games that you can just not pay attention to and just drink. Toledo versus Arkansas State. I mean, are there any prospects worth mentioning in this game for you, Justis?
Man, I think there's like a fullback. I think there's a fullback who like actually got hurt or something, so I don't even know if he's back. I just know his name's written down somewhere. That's all I got on Toledo. Arkansas, I have no idea.
Justin, anything from you?
On Arkansas State, I have a notes on a linebacker named Kushan Lee. Nothing special. Toledo, I feel like I've started to watch them like 2 times this year. It was like, nah, I got to do some chores or something.
Yeah, that's basically how these teams are going to, end up here. This isn't a, pick on Toledo and Arkansas State type thing. This is just reality. So,
yeah, how did this game get played this late into the bowl season?
well, they always have that kind of game in between the big bowls and the.
Is it the one in Canada? Is that what this is called?
Where is it? Let me look. No, this is. Hold on. Where is it at? I got it right here. This is the one in Mobile at Lead Peebles Stadium. So. This is the tune-up for the Senior Bowl to get all those Mobilians excited for the Senior Bowl that's going to be coming there. So, yeah, Quashawn Lee's kind of the sleeper guy that I had written down.
Well, actually, I lied to you guys. There's the center for Toledo.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Greg Mance.
I haven't really paid attention to him, but he's definitely someone that people are talking about.
Yeah, and I had him in my notes of people that I've spoken with that have talked about him. He's a 4-year starter, so I mean, even at a small school, that's different. So
yeah, well, I know that so for example, Green Bay, if someone starts more than 40 games in their career on the offensive line, they send a scout no matter what. So it's things like that where it's like, yeah, if you're a 4-year starter, that's significant.
you guys both had Iowa, Tennessee, and Houston, Pitt. Iowa, Tennessee, and Pittsburgh. It's interesting to see those guys, all those teams for you guys, so low on your interest radar. Does that just have to do with the fact of where these programs are right now, Justis?
I would think so. I mean, Tennessee's probably top guy that you're talking about, unless you're a big A.J. Johnson guy, is Justin Coleman, who's going to end up being like an East-West Shrine Game invite. Tennessee just doesn't have that much talent right now, and Iowa's pretty much Iowa. I mean, you pretty much know what you're going to expect there. They have 2 really good defensive linemen. One being Carl Davis, who a lot of people like and some thought was going to be a first-rounder coming into the season. And then Brandon Scherf, who's kind of, that prototypical Iowa lineman, undersized left tackle he might move into guard at the next level.
For you, Justin, is this just kind of Pitt regrouping after, and they'll have to do it again with the loss of Paul Christ, or is this just how it's going to be for Pittsburgh for a little bit?
Pittsburgh's just, I think, in one of those in-between type of seasons. It's like they've got some young players like the receiver and Boyd, who's not draft eligible. Last year they had Tom Savage. Of course, he's gone to the NFL. And so you're kind of at an in-between stage with Pitt where, like, James Conner is another one that's not draft eligible this year, and he's their leading rusher, and he's played defensive end. So really all you're left with is TJ Clemmings, and that's kind of a game where you can you just record and you fast forward and just watch one player. So that's kind of why my interest level is low. I wouldn't be glued to my set for Pitt.
Interestingly enough, and this is the biggest disparity in your guys' list. I don't know if you guys looked at what each other sent me, but Justin, you had Auburn, Wisconsin as one of your best games, and Justis, you had it as one of your worst games. Is that just for you, Justin, all about Melvin Gordon?
Yeah, pretty much. He's the main draw, I think, for me. And coming off to watch him, really get stifled against Ohio State, and now to know that he's had trouble getting going twice against them in the last 2 seasons. You don't get a chance to see him against a lot of fast defenses that run around. So, Auburn's not the best defense in the SEC, but it has those SEC athletes. And it's going to have to be Gordon getting the job done if Wisconsin's going to have any shot. They're coming off a 59-0 blowout. They don't have a lot of help in the passing game. So this is a chance for him to rebound a little bit in my eyes. But the flip side of that is I've seen him. He's a player I've seen so many times that I just really don't know that anything he could do at this point is going to really change my opinion. But I just find it interesting, and I do think Auburn's got a few guys on their side that make this game interesting for me as well.
What about you, Justice? You're kind of low on this game. What's your reasoning?
Yeah, I mean, I want to see guys like Gabe Wright just go against that massive offensive line and things like that. It's just that Wisconsin just isn't that interesting to me from a draft perspective. I mean, they have giants on the offensive line, a couple of their guys. I know their center who's been hurt for most of the season. He's actually probably going to end up being an early pick at center whenever he ends up declaring, but I don't think it's going to be this year. And just there's Melvin Gordon on that Wisconsin team. But like Justin said, I mean, if you watch Wisconsin, your eyes have pretty much been glued to Melvin Gordon already, and you should pretty much have your mind made up at this point.
The other big disparity, and wasn't quite as big, but it's not even really a disparity, but Boise State versus U of A, I don't even know what to call them anymore. What do they call the big bowls now? Like, I used to be able to call it a BCS bowl, but what is it called now?
It involves the word "in," right?
I have no idea. That's why I'm. Yeah. So I mean, that's the issue I'm having. I don't even know what to call it. But from a prospect perspective, this is easily the worst of the Big Six bowl games, right? Justice.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, when you look at Boise State's team, their guys are really underclassmen, and I don't think either of them are going to declare. I'm spacing out on their names, but they have that edge player who's very good, and then they have a cornerback who's solid. I mean, outside of Jay Ajayi, who I believe has already declared, I just don't see. I don't see really a reason to watch Boise State. Some people like Matt Miller coming out earlier in the year. He's been banged up pretty much this whole season. At this point, it's hard to say that a guy like that's going to get drafted. University of Arizona is, they have a couple guys. I mean, you can watch like Bondurant at safety and guys like that. Both of their tackle prospects have an outside shot of getting drafted, or probably more of camp guys. But outside of that, I mean, like Arizona's big draw is Scooby Wright and their receivers at this point. And I guess living out here on the West Coast, I kind of feel the same way Justin was saying about Wisconsin, where it's like, yeah, I watched like Arizona, like I've seen them play night games like 4 times this year, and I've watched those receivers. And after you've seen those receivers, that's kind of all you need to watch of that Arizona team, at least, in my opinion.
Well, that and they always beat Oregon except in the championship game. So,
Except that.
Justin, for you, is it really just the Arizona wide receivers and kind of JHI? Is that why you're so low?
I'm low on this one because, even being out here in Chicago, I've seen Arizona play 4 times too, and gotten pretty detailed in breaking them down. So I mean, it's this for me. It's the safeties. You got Bondurant, Jordan Grandin. You got corner Jonathan McKnight, who all might go late in the draft or be undrafted picks or undrafted pickups. I'm sorry, and then Austin Hill, kind of disappointing to me this year. Caleb Jones is probably a better prospect now at receiver, but then he's a redshirt sophomore. So is he coming out? I'm not real sure. So really, the interest is low on this one, just because I've already seen so much of Arizona, and I just don't get amped up for a team like Boise that really has one guy drawing me in. So that's just what it boiled down to is I've seen Arizona enough, so I didn't really feel like I need to see him again.
Before Justice has to get out of here, let's get to your guys' big games that both of you liked. Ole Miss versus TCU. Is that the best game coming up here for you, Justice, or are you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like it a lot. I mean, there's just dudes everywhere. Like, I know a lot of people don't like Bo Wallace. At this point, I mean, Bo Wallace is what I said he was. I mean, he's probably going to be a fifth, sixth round pick that someone's going to try to fix at the next level. Then you look at the secondary of that team, and you see guys like Cody Pruitt, who's probably going to be the top senior safety at least in this class, and then you have guys like Sinquiz Golston, out there too. And then, on TCU's defense is kind of the same way, where they have Chucky Hunter, and then they have Dawson, who's kind of like the riser as far as these linebackers go in their senior years. I mean, I believe Josh Norris from Roto-World NBC Sports just mocked Dawson as like a top 20 pick in his first mock draft today. That's a little rich to me, but those are definitely the guys to watch out for in this game.
Cody Pruitt, Justin, in a safety class that maybe has some questions, and we've discussed safeties before and how hard it can be to project them at the next level. Is he a guy that shows up because he's kind of got that ball hawk, quote unquote, style, but he also has the ability to lay the wood?
Yeah, for me, Cody Pruitt is, he shows up in his production. So what we don't always see in the screen, like we've talked about, he's still getting interceptions. He's still getting his hands on the ball. So he's playing back in coverage. But the thing is, his production dipped a little bit this year. So now what you're looking at really is a big guy who's like 220. We've talked about some small linebackers that are his size, and he can really run. And you want to see if maybe that is the production that he had as a junior when he had 6 interceptions. Is that a fluke because he dipped? He only had 2 picks, 2 pass breakups this year. But I still think that he's a player who can elevate himself with a good bowl game, with solid pre-draft workouts and things like that. And he's not Deion Buchanan, but he's kind of reminds me like similar type of player.
Yeah, damn right he's not Deion Buchanan.
Yeah.
As far as Indy LSU goes, is that a battle of the offensive tackles that La'el Collins is coming out, but I know not everybody loves him. Whereas Stanley may or may not come out. We have no idea still. Is that really the main attraction in this game? Justice.
Oh, is it me? Yeah. I mean, at least to me, I mean, those are clearly the best 2 players on those teams. You have guys like Daniel Hunter playing defensive end for LSU, and I mean, basically their whole secondary is flirting with coming out in the draft at this point. At least if you believe some of these reports. The other guy that I would say that is like that you'd probably want to look at is that Ben Koyak. I mean, Notre Dame tight ends at this point, you know what you're going to get. I mean, it seems like every single year there's another one of them drafted in, day 1, day 2 range. It sounds like he's probably going to be the top senior tight end of this draft class. I really haven't seen that much of him. And also, Everett Golson got benched in this game. Got benched before this game, so he's not going to be the starter here, which is interesting because we're only a couple months removed from talking about Everett Golson, at least some people, as a first-round pick.
You were such a dick back then, talking about how bad he was.
I tweeted out earlier. I was like, I compared him to Aaron Murray, and you guys freaked out thinking I was too hard. Maybe I was too soft on him.
Yeah, Aaron Murray never got benched. Jeez.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, he fought through his senior year. Yeah.
Justin, for you, is there anybody outside of these tackle prospects and maybe Koyak that you're interested in?
Not really. We pretty much touched on most of the big ones, but Notre Dame's got Cody Riggs, who's a transfer from Florida, in their defensive backfield. Justis touched on all the defensive backs for LSU, but I also like they have a big running back, Kenny Hilliard. He's going to the East-West Shrine game, and every time I watch LSU, he seems to grind out some tough yards. So he's not. I don't think he's. And we always talk about how deep this running class and how deep this running back class and how talented it is. So I don't know that he gets drafted, but he's certainly got a chance to go. He reminds me of one of these Patriots backs, like Brandon Bolden or LeGarrette Blount, who's going to have a career as a short yardage back.
A game that maybe has more prospects on the Louisville side than the Georgia side, but both of you are interested in this game. Georgia, Louisville, the Belk Bowl. The Belk Bowl's given us some good games, if I remember right, the last couple of years. So you look at these guys, you look at the prospects. Who on Georgia stacks up to, just prospect-wise, guys like Gerard Holloman, Devontae Parker, the big names coming out of Louisville for you, Justis?
I think you look at the linebackers, right? Like Jordan Jenkins is the big one there. They also have a guy, I believe his name is David Andrews, who's being looked at from a center prospect. I know some people made a big deal that he wasn't named on the All-American, named on a bunch of All-American lists and things like that. Apparently he's very solid. Georgia's left tackle did well against guys like Dick Beasley and stuff, but I believe he still has another year under his belt. Georgia still has a couple receivers that I'm still semi-interested in. I don't think those guys. They're probably going to be more of camp invites than draftable type of prospects. But you're right. Louisville. Even the guys you didn't touch. Their entire offensive line is probably going to get drafted, even if they're just going to get drafted in the 5th, 6th round. They have some players all over that field. Charlie Strong left his influence there. If you're a fan of University of Texas, you got to be happy with what he left over at Louisville.
Justin, for you, who are some names that we should be watching that maybe we haven't touched on yet?
Well, for Louisville, you have Devontae Parker, who's a lot of people have as the top senior receiver. You guys know I don't, but Parker is a player that bears watching, and he should have some success against that Georgia secondary. I like the tight end for Louisville, Gerald Christian. I know Dane Brugler's high on him too. Lorenzo Malden, their edge player. He's kind of in the same class, maybe a slight drop off of a Nate Orchard type. But then on the Georgia side, you got there's a couple inside linebacker prospects in Ramik Wilson and Amarlo Herrera. And I know I think Wilson has a Senior Bowl invite. I think Herrera has a Shrine Game invite. So that kind of gives you a clue of where the NFL those guys. I remember earlier in the year I was watching Georgia, and I thought Ramik Wilson reminded me of Lamin Barrow from LSU, who was drafted. Those are some of the guys I'll be watching this game. This game's really kind of loaded with day 2, day 3 picks.
Yeah, I think Todd McShay had something where it was he was going down and he ranked the top 10 both left by the number of prospects that he had draftable in the games, and this game like ranked like crazy high, like on that relative scale of what this bowl should be and what kind of talent they have. It was super high, but like you said, it's a lot of day 3 selections.
In terms of sneaky prospect games, I really like this Mizzou Minnesota game. Maybe not the sexiest game in terms of names, but you have Mizzou who has those pass rushers. Maybe Shane Ray doesn't get kicked out of a game. I don't know. We've talked about Shane Ray and Marcus Golden quite a bit, but on the other side, you have Minnesota, and you have the running back David Cobb, and what he can do against a pretty decent Mizzou defense. Who are some other guys that we should be looking at in this game, Justin?
Max Williams, the tight end from Minnesota. It sounds like he's made up his mind and he's going to go into the draft. He's a redshirt sophomore. A lot of people like him as the number 1 tight end in the class. So, Cobb, you touched on him, but he's a player who I think is a solid running back, but it's never really clicked for me with him. He's a bigger guy, in terms of weight, and I think he's a little slower than what maybe he looks like. I know he can contribute in the passing game, but he's really – there's so many better backs in the Big Ten. He's never really done it for me. So this is a good test for him against that line. Maybe he can help change some people's minds, but he's always been like a 5th-round guy to me.
How big of a test is this for Max Williams, Justice?
Pretty big. I mean, I don't know. Like when you're a tight end, you really look for like certain games, just because your production isn't going to be super high. And I know they kind of feed Max Williams there, but now that he's declared as a redshirt sophomore, that's significant. I mean, all eyes are going to be on you. Like you said, they have Cobb. Outside of that, there's really no one on Minnesota's team that you're really like staring down. Like you guys said, I mean, the 2 guys you're really looking at as far as Missouri goes is probably their 2 ends. I'm not a huge Ray guy. We've gone over this before, and I'm also not a huge. I'm not gonna be a huge Golden guy. I think I ended up giving him like a fifth, 6th round grade. The other guy that I would tell you guys to watch is Missouri's left tackle, and I'm spacing out on his name right now. But a couple people have said that he could probably be a starting right tackle in the NFL, given a year or two, like kind of like a Justin Britt type, which is is what it is. I mean, Justin Britt was taken like 5 rounds higher than I thought he was going to get taken. So yeah, I don't know how to do the math on that one.
That would be Mitch Morse is the guy's name, and they also have a kick returner named Marcus Murphy. Who's I think he's had a couple kick return touchdowns this year, so that could add some flavor to this game too.
Yeah, I believe he's being looked at as a flex running back and receiver. Like people don't know what kind of position he's going to play at the next level. Oh.
When you look at the next game on our list, yeah, I got to remember the mute button. That's Michigan State versus Baylor. That's kind of a contrast in styles. You have Baylor who wants to get out and throw the ball all over the field, and you have Michigan State who wants to slow it down, kind of grind you out. I like this in terms of prospect watching games like this where they're so different from what these guys do on a day or a week-to-week basis, and they have to get out of their comfort zone. How much can you learn from a game like this, Justice?
I mean, a lot. I mean, the way Michigan State runs that. I mean, they. Okay, let me speak English.
I know you're heartbroken because Sean Oakman's not coming out, but
yeah, I know.
Gather your thoughts.
We all are.
It's crushed. Baylor sees a lot of quarters defense in the Big 12, but they don't see the same type of quarters defense that Michigan State throws out there. And Michigan State already kind of got a look at a spread offense, to that extent, a couple times this year. I mean, they've seen Ohio State play. They've seen Oregon play firsthand. I'm not sure what's going to happen when Baylor gets punched in the mouth a couple times because Michigan State plays a way of football that it's hard to avoid getting knocked out for a couple seconds. A bunch of prospects all over the field. I mean, being able to see how Bryce Petty diagnoses that Michigan State defense is going to be huge. Seeing Sean Oakman and go against a great left tackle, even if he reportedly isn't going to come out this year, still going to be great. I mean, he's probably going to end up being one of my top edge rushers coming in next season. Then there's just guys all over the field. I mean, you look at Goodley. People really like Levi Norwood. Just a bunch of dudes on both sides of the ball. It should be really fun to watch just these two styles of play. Just go at it.
Shalik Calhoun and going against Spencer Drango. Do you think this is a good matchup for Calhoun, or is this where he gets even kind of more exposed, Justin?
It's a good matchup for him. I wasn't. I know people liked Drango, and I only really honed in on one game, and he didn't blow me away. So I think this is a matchup that Calhoun can have some success. I've seen some Baylor linemen down over the last couple of years, and they haven't really lived up to what I thought they would be when I've actually seen them. So this game is weird because there are a ton of prospects on the field, but it could amount to like the big tease game or the 2016 draft preview, because you've got all these guys like Connor Cook, and Oakman, Jack Conklin, Shalik Calhoun, Trey Waynes, and we don't know if these guys are actually going to declare for the draft. A couple of them probably will.
Yeah, I would bet Waynes comes out just because this corner class doesn't look very good. Even in free agency, these guys, I've talked to a couple people who said, Devon House might get a huge contract at free agency just because how shallow the depth is at corner in both the draft and free agency this year, especially with those lengthy guys. If Waynes comes out and if Peters is, off-field stuff is what it's been reported and then unreported by, Washington's coaching staff, I'd kind of be surprised if Waynes wasn't the top cornerback drafted.
Yeah, Waynes is a good player. He's got a history of knee injuries, so that could cause some concern, but it also could be a reason why he wants to leave. And with Calhoun, it seems to me like, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but it seems to me like he's kind of gone back and forth. He's leaning towards staying, he's leaning toward going. I think the last thing I saw today was he's leaning toward going, but he seems to be not too sure of himself. The thing
about him is like, I guess he was like set that he was going to declare after this season, and then this season did go as well as he thought it would. I mean, he was completely shut down by Jake Fisher, who didn't do great against Nate Orchard. To put it in perspective of like other pass rushers, I'm just like, when watching Shalik Calhoun, I'm just like not sure how good he is. Like, he's long. I guess one thing that agents are trying to like push him on is like he's going to be 23 at the next when he declares next year, if he does stay. And there's that whole thing where it's like, oh, you're an overage prospect now, as opposed to being a young guy who declares and has potential, because for some reason 1 year makes all the difference in the entire world. So yeah, that's what I've heard, at least on Shalik Calhoun.
Justis, how important is a game like this for Trey Waynes, especially when you look at, he's on the fence about whether he's coming out or not? Can this make a decision for him, or is it just one game in the process in your mind?
Like I said, I mean, if I were Trey Waynes, my decision would have been made already. I'd probably be coming out. But this game is probably going to be pretty big for him. You're going to see him against guys like Levi Norwood, who could just fly, and then guys against Antoine Goodley, who's just a big body guy. And the way Baylor's going to spread him out, and if Michigan State's going to play quarters the entire time, he's essentially going to be playing man to man on those guys on the boundary, and he's going to be playing on an island against two of the best receivers in this class. So that's nothing to on either. That's going to be some good tape for him.
UCLA, Kansas State, the Hunley farewell tour, but you have Eric Kendricks, who I'm not sure what everybody on this podcast thinks of Kendricks, but I know there's some differing opinions. And then you have whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce, the defensive end from UCLA.
Well,
Yeah,
Matteo Dicapella.
yeah, whatever you just said. um, on the other side for Kansas State, they have typical Kansas State players. I mean, they have guys that'll get drafted and probably make an NFL roster, but they don't have any really top guys. Is that why both of you are kind of just semi interested in this game? I'll start with you, Justin.
Yeah, I mean that and that I've seen UCLA so many times this year that I kind of have my mind made up on their guys. For the most.
You lose him?
Yeah, I think we lost him. Go ahead, Justin. I'll mute him.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. I mean, when you're looking at Kansas State, the big guy you're probably talking about is Lockett, who even then didn't have the senior year that you thought he would. When you're looking at UCLA, I've seen him plenty of times, but there's just so many guys on that team. Most of them were underclassmen. I mean, Brett Hundley's coming out. Oh, Magbid Odighizo's there. You have a couple guys in the secondary who don't really stand out that much. But then you have guys like Kendricks and stuff like that. I really like Kendricks, but it seems more and more likely that he's going to end up being a back of day two type of player when it's all said and done when he's drafted. And then you get a good look at guys, in the future of like Eddie Vanderdoes and like Miles Jack and guys like that, who are really like the future of UCLA because like those guys are staying and those guys are blue chip guys.
You back with us, Justin? Justin? Nope. Okay. So when you look at Kansas State, Tyler Lockett is an interesting prospect, kind of a slot guy, and then you have B.J. Finney, who's their center. He's been looked at differently this year by different people. What are your thoughts on just the Kansas State prospects, and are there that many draftable guys, or are those really the two guys I mentioned?
Well, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think. There's those two. Jake Waters is probably going to get a look. I'm not sure if he's going to be. He's going to get a camp invite if nothing else. But I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Waters in this senior quarterback class gets taken in the 6th or 7th round. And then I believe I can't remember if it's Mueller, that defensive end halfback hybrid that they have out there. That's probably he's an undersized defensive end and is going to get looked as a fullback like that one. Man, I'm spacing on his name too. The defensive end that was drafted out of Central Florida by the 49ers a while back and got moved into a fullback. That seems like that's kind of going to be his career path.
Justin's back now. Hey, how's it going, Justin?
Yeah, I lost you guys. I don't know what happened, but I think Justis was talking about Bruce Miller. Was that the guy's name, the fullback?
Yep, nailed it. Yep, that was the guy. I don't really remember anyone's names at this point. That's halfway.
Everything just bleeds together at this point.
Yeah, just like that one guy and just give out adjectives.
For you, Justin, you've watched a lot. Justice talked about how Eric Kendricks he likes, but from what he has heard, he's a day two guy, backup coming into the NFL. What are your sentiments on that?
On Eric Kendricks, yeah, I think he's just seen his status inflated a lot. I've seen him in the first round of some mocks, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before, but I've been watching a lot of UCLA games and sat through an entire quarter or half and just said, like, where is Eric Kendricks? Like, what has he been doing? I haven't noticed him, or even when I'm looking for him, he's not always showing up. And then we talked about this one time, the draft breakdown effect, when his Eric Kendricks video against Virginia was posted, and he had an outstanding game. And the next thing you know, he's a first-round pick. And I think there's some of that recency bias when something like that happens. But he's a little on the small side for me. And then I just have these flashbacks to a guy like Arthur Brown, who people wanted to put in the top 5, top 10 a couple of years ago, and he could barely find the field this year.
Justice has got to go, but before he goes, I want your picks for what is that, Thursday? We're not going to talk about the games. We'll talk about those on Monday when we can kind of talk about what happened and then what to look forward in the championship game. But Justice, Who's going to end up in the national championship game for you?
Oh man, you're gonna make me do this with Justin on here. Uh, I think I gotta roll. I gotta roll with Baylor on this one. For no other reason than like Ohio State's on their third quarterback, and if Saban, you're giving Saban this much time to go against the third string quarterback, uh, I bet he'll cook up something. He'll figure it out. Um, as far as Oregon, Florida State, I mean, Oregon already lost Ifo Ekpe. Ronas Grossu's still coming off an injury. Oregon's already down 2 tackles this season. There's just been a bunch of stuff going on. Braylon Addison's coming back to practice now, but he has a non-contact jersey on. He was going to be Mariota's top target heading into the season. There's just a lot going against Oregon already, and going against Florida State, who even Eddie Goldman was injured in the ACC championship against Georgia Tech. I just think for some reason, I mean, they're pretty much an SEC school, and whenever Oregon goes against SEC defensive lines, they just get beat up, and it's just going to be interesting to see, Jake Fisher going against a guy like Mario Edwards Jr. and stuff like that. Watching Rashad Green against, he might be lined up against a true freshman cornerback instead of a 3-time All-American cornerback. That's probably going to be significant. Just stuff like that in general. I'd just be surprised if Oregon came out with that win. So I'm probably going to have to go against my Oregon Ducks and Justin's Ohio State Buckeyes on this one. It's like Florida State and Bama.
At least you're consistent. So,
he is going for the double reverse jinx.
That's right.
Great.
All right, see you, man.
All right, see you guys.
See ya.
All right, so a couple games we didn't hit on. I mean, I'm interested in the fact, and I was going to ask him, but we kind of ran out of time. Neither of you guys are super excited about this Mississippi State-Georgia Tech game. Is that more to do with Georgia Tech than Mississippi State, or is it more to do with the fact that you've just seen so much Mississippi State and you don't care enough about?
It's both. It's both, really, because Mississippi State was such the hot ticket early in the season, and unlike Ole Miss, who I've seen a bunch of times too. I think I've seen like 6 Ole Miss games this year, but I like watching them. I enjoy watching them. And Mississippi State prospects tend to let me down when I watch them. Like, I've watched Bernardrick McKinney. I want to like him so badly because I know some teams that could use a presence like that in the linebacking corps, and he still just doesn't really stick out to me in a lot of games, And then Dak Prescott became so insanely overrated because he's going to be a Heisman guy, and it looks like he's probably going to go back to school next year. And then you have this Georgia Tech offense, and I've made my feelings known on these kind of triple option teams. Like, it's hard to glean anything from these games unless you're trying to see, like, can your defensive end stay at home and defend the run. So if you want to watch Preston Smith along the defensive line for Mississippi State, this could be a good test for him. It could be a really good test for McKinney, and a chance for him to stand out for a change. But just kind of, I should be more into Georgia Tech because it's what college football is all about. They did give Florida State a run for their money, but it's just hard. I feel like I'm watching a service academy, and that these guys are going to be out of the league for 2 years after the game's over. Yo, you there?
Yeah. So, did you hear what I said or no?
No, it was all cut out.
Oh, okay, great. I was just asking about McKinney. He was like a top 15 hype type of guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, I remember earlier in the year we talked about him, and I liked the way he could play downhill, and I know some people thought he could play off the edge. I always wanted to see if he could cover because I think I envision this like middle linebacker role for him, kind of like what the Browns try to do with Carlos Dansby, but he just doesn't seem like that kind of player. The more and more I watch him, the less I think he's that kind of player. Now I understand a new cut up of him against LSU was just posted recently. I haven't seen that one. Supposedly that's a really good game of his. I need to see good games like that. I don't think he's a top 15 guy though. No way.
Is he even a first round guy anymore?
That's hard to say just because you don't know who's coming out right now, and I don't think you have. If you have a team that's looking for a linebacker, and the other thing is he's supposedly going to run in the high 4.4, low 4.5 range, and if he can do that at 245, 250, that's gonna talk someone into it. So, is he going to be drafted in the first round? If I had to guess today, I would say yes. He might shake out to where he's in my top 32 just because I do like the metric stuff. I'll have to work through that once we know the numbers.
The last game, I think, of the important games, maybe I'm missing one, but Washington versus Oklahoma State. Is your interest in this game based mainly off of Washington and their prospects?
Yeah, almost exclusively. Because I think Oklahoma State had Tyreek Hill, and I think he's suspended or kicked off the team because of some domestic issue that he had that involved the police. So I think he's a junior. He was probably one of the only guys worth watching on the Oklahoma State side who's draft eligible. Washington's minus Peters, who was dismissed, but they still have Danny Shelton and they still have Shaq Thompson. So yeah, it's all about Washington in this game, and that is a team that, for whatever reason, I just haven't seen as much of them as I'd like to, and so that is a team I want to check out. I don't know how great of a test this is, but I do know that Oklahoma State has played a couple of games close that I didn't really expect them to. So they always seem to just play up to the level of their competition.
Any other games that we have that we haven't talked about, or are you pretty good for this week?
Yeah, that's pretty much it for going into the weekend. We've got there's a couple
ECU
teams we
Florida.
didn't really.
What are your thoughts on Florida?
It,
I mean, this is a hard game to kind of glean anything from.
Maybe Florida's up for this because a lot of these guys are going to be leaving after this game, or maybe they're just kind of mentally checked out. I don't know what to expect out of them. If they're playing up to their potential defensively, then I think then Shane Carden and Justin Hardy have their work cut out for them because Florida does have some really good defensive players. This could be a game, if you're a Shane Carden guy, and I'm not, this could be a game where he ends up looking really bad, or it could be like a fool's gold type of thing where if Florida's checked out, he has some surprisingly good numbers. But if anyone's checking this game out, I would just ask them to watch Shane Carden's velocity on his throws, and I don't think he's going to show an NFL arm. Justin Hardy is the ECU player to watch. I think there's people that are higher on him than I am. I've seen him projected even as a second-round pick. He can return punts, but he's one of these slight, thin kind of slot projections to the next level, similar to Rashad Green from Florida State, that type of player who's going to win with his route running and his quickness. So he's an exciting player, though, and by far to me the best ECU prospect.
Have you got to see Terry Williams at all? He's a guy I like. Their nose tackle. I forget what the story was behind him and why he kind of fell off the radar, but he's a massive guy, 6'1", 350.
I have not seen him. The only other guy I have notes on for ECU is receiver Cam Worthy, but Williams is a player who, his name came up recently, and I had to add him to my list because I didn't really even know about him. So you're always, if you're looking for nose tackles, that just hearing that frame, just hearing you say his dimensions, it kind of piques the interest. But those guys are always a challenge for me to watch because I know what they're supposed to be doing. It's just not all that exciting to watch for 3 hours.
No, exactly. I mean, especially nose tackles when they're asked to just, kind of fill gaps the entire time. So,
right.
Before we get to the hot takes, your thoughts on these games this week? Are you kind of with Justis in that Alabama is going to be too much for a third-string Ohio State quarterback, or is Urban Meyer's system kind of good enough to handle that?
I don't know. I mean, I thought Ohio State was going to lose to Wisconsin, and then they went out and rolled up 59-0. If Jim Tressel was coaching, I would expect a letdown. They always seemed to be in over their heads after long layoffs against the SEC team. But I think, I expect Alabama to win this game. But I think it's going to be really close and back and forth, kind of similar to the way the Iron Bowl went, where it looked like, I think it can be a high score like that, even with Cardale Jones, because we've seen some holes in Alabama's defense, especially their secondary. There are some issues on their offense, too, just with Blake Sims turning the ball over. We've seen that a couple times. I think TJ Yeldon, I watched him a little bit this week to try and get a feel for him, and I came away a little lower on him than I originally was because I didn't see the speed around the corner from him. And if Ohio State can really make life tough for Melvin Gordon, can they? I think they can take on a TJ Yeldon. So there are ways Ohio State can keep this close. I think ultimately, I would have loved to pick Ohio State, and I probably would have if JT Barrett was healthy. But ultimately, I just don't. I haven't seen enough of Cardale Jones, and I just hope he proves me wrong. And you guys know I'm a Ohio State alum, but I got to pick Alabama if I'm looking at it from just purely objective standpoint.
Oregon, Florida State. Justis kind of hinted at it. Oregon's beat up. Florida State's got some nicks, but nothing too serious. And of course, famous Jameis in a big game always seems to have some magic. Is this Oregon team just too beat up, or can Mariota carry them a little more?
Well, Justis probably knows more about this than I do. But I will tell you, before he spoke on it, I was really kind of thinking, especially before Ifo Ekpere-Olumu got hurt, I was really thinking like this is going to be the game that Florida State finally loses because they have just, they've just gotten so close so many times to dropping one. But that might be a week away from, or 10 days away from that, because once he broke it down step for step, it really started to make sense that Florida State can win this game. But I'll tell you this, they're going to have to play better than I've seen them play against Louisville, against Notre Dame, against Georgia Tech, where they could have lost any of those 3 games, and Louisville almost was boat racing them at halftime. So they can't get behind. They're going to have to look at some of the blueprints of the way teams have been able to have success against Oregon. But all that being said, I'm not going to let Justis talk me out of this one. I think Oregon's going to win this game, and that they are going to to face Alabama in the championship. And I think Oregon, this game's really fun because Mariota versus Winston is just like a fountain of hot takes, and I just cannot wait. Either way this goes, it's going to be so fun to just hear the takes.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting. Speaking of takes, hot takes this week, do you have any before we head out of here?
I got one. This one's hot off the press, right? As right before we got on, as that Clemson game was wrapping up, Clemson wrapped up a 40-6 win over Texas, and Cole Stout had a pretty good game from what I understand, and I only caught the tail end of it. But I caught enough of it to catch our good friend Ben Albright saying that Cole Stout might have made himself some money today with his performance in that game. I will say this, Cole Stout is a guy was benched for a true freshman this year and spent most of the season when he was playing looking just completely awful. So I don't think he made himself any money, at least at the NFL level. But Ben did have a really good point to follow up after he was questioned on that take. And he said you would be surprised at the recency bias at play with these bowl games. And in that respect, I think he's absolutely right. And we've talked about this, and we've alluded to this about a lot of these games. If guys come out and they blow the doors off in this bowl game, in these bowl games, in this bowl setting, these are the type of things that can make lasting impressions, not just on fans, but on NFL people, and people get carried away. We see it every single year.
Well, and they absolutely destroyed Oklahoma, who a lot of people liked. So I'm going to go back a little bit, and I don't remember who tweeted it. I'll have to look it up. But sorry. It was Kyle Allen, the true freshman quarterback for Texas A&M, is the worst quarterback he's ever seen, or something to that effect, when it was his first game. And I found that interesting, that it's like people are upset that a true freshman quarterback struggles in his first game ever on a college field, and are willing to say he's the worst this or that. And it's like, recruiting services are wrong a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot. But you don't get to be the number one rated high school whatever quarterback, or whatever. I know they change all the time how they designate these guys, but he was one of the top recruited quarterbacks for a reason. And I think coming out today, he threw 4 touchdowns and had a rushing touchdown, and threw an INT as well, kind of a stupid freshman throw. But you can definitely see the improvement, and that's one of those things that you just kind of watch as the year goes along. I mean, we remember at the beginning of the year, Kenny Hill was clearly better than Johnny Manziel, and there was going to be no step back. And in fact, they were going to win a national championship because what was his nickname? I can't even remember.
Kenny Trill.
Yeah, Kenny Trill was at the helm. So and now it looks like the Trill era at NM is over, and you'll be getting a lot more Kyle Allen. So that kind of goes with what you're just talking about recency bias. When you do it at the end of the year, it's a really, really good thing. So you end up with guys that can make some money for themselves, kind of play themselves into higher draft status than probably they would have been. So that's what ends up, I think, happening. Anything else before we head out of here?
No, I wanted to give a hat tip to our buddy Justis. I know he's off the air now, but he was calling that Jeremiah Putasi from Utah would be declaring for the draft. And he's been out in front of a lot of these underclassmen early on this year. So hats off to Justis. He's been really on top of the rumors today, working his sources, working all that. So He's getting up there. He's not in Tony Pauline territory yet, but he's like a Tony Pauline Jr. this year.
Yeah, and we get to tap into him whenever. I was just going to kind of add a segment towards the end here, and just guys to follow on Twitter as we get into the draft season. There's a lot of great guys, and you look at the guys. I mean, Justis has a ton of followers on Twitter. You have a ton of followers on Twitter. One of the guys that does not, and he's a guy I know personally. He's worked for the Arizona Rattlers. He's interned for ASU. His name's Blake Murphy. Give Blake Murphy 7 a follow. Blake Murphy, the number 7. Good guy on Twitter. Excellent insight into kind of the Cardinals, but also the NFL draft, and a guy that's kind of working his way up through the ranks, and wouldn't surprise me if he's working for a college or NFL team in the next couple of years as he graduates from college. So just give him a look on Twitter, and that's it from me tonight. Justin, appreciate it. I will talk. Either you'll be really happy or expectedly sad on Monday next week.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to the game, and it's just I was really happy that the committee got it right and got Ohio State into that last spot, and that the team was able to overcome just a disaster, not only with their starting quarterback Braxton Miller going down, but then just completely flopping against Virginia Tech early in the year and just really turning things around. So I'm proud of Ohio State no matter what. I'm looking forward to the future rivalry with Jim Harbaugh. And, I think Alabama's going to have a run for their money this week.
Well, I hope so, because the first college playoff to see the SEC go down in round 1 would be kind of fitting to all the people that have been complaining over the years. So,
yeah, I mean, I would love nothing more than to see that, but, my fingers are crossed. But I think I'll probably need a couple beers that night.
Oh, yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. Everybody have a good night.
Good night, everyone.